Imagine a 40-acre abandoned park in a city, neglected and overgrown. And now picture that same place 10 years later as the top-ranked park in the city and visited by 10,000 people a month. This is the story of the wilds. But it's also a story about community and how we can change our cities to make them sustainable and safe, resilient for the long term. About 10 years ago, I moved into an apartment which overlooks the wilds. And at that stage, nobody went there. And I got a dog called Pablo. This is him. He's a cross Labrador retriever. And he needed a walk every day. And I thought, this is crazy that I live next to this big green space and I can't go there. And so I got a key for a side gate, and Pablo and I would venture in there quietly. And we discovered this wonderland, like this enchanted forest. And I like plants, so I'd take clippers in with me and I'd start trimming and fixing. And that started to grow. And I encouraged a few friends to join me. I employed one or two people. And every weekend we'd do some more work. We'd seed and plant and separate plants and started fixing things. And the more we did, the more there was to do. We found lakes and ponds and old waterfalls and bridges and all this old infrastructure. The park is almost 100 years old. And with our work, we started to see nature coming back. As we took out branches, the light came down, the rains came through, and the bush, all these beautiful indigenous plants, started to recover. And I signed an MOU with City Parks, and I adopted the park, and they brought in more staff, and I brought in more people. And so it grew and grew. And after a couple of years, I was still trying to convince my friends to come into the wilds. But it had such a fearsome reputation that they wouldn't come. And I'm an artist, and I thought, how can I use my creativity to try and shift perceptions around this space? And I came up with the idea of cutting my charcoal drawings into sculptures and painting them in bright colors. And I did an installation on this very day, Mandela Day in 2017, of 67 owls in the forest. 67 owls in honor of Madiba's 67 years of public service. And I clearly remember that day because the car park was full and I'd never seen anything like it before. It was jam full of people. This abandoned park suddenly came to life. And I noticed how people were bringing their families and bringing their kids, and they were walking up to the owl forest, and the kids were screaming with delight as they counted them. And in the ensuing weeks and months, I saw that the owl forest became an attraction in itself. People were coming to the wilds, parking, walking up to the owl forest, doing that, and then going home again. So I realized art can play a strong role in reimagining public space. So what if I do more, and I get that to get people to explore more of this beautiful space? And so I put up a kudu, another point on the hill, and people would walk to the kudu. And then I put a life-size giraffe, so people on the road outside could look into the park and think, what's that pink thing? And then come into the park. And I saw how the sculptures, by bringing people to circulate around this park, were starting to make it safe. And I investigated all kinds of ways of putting in cameras and expensive equipment. But I didn't have the budget for that. And anyway, with all those winding pathways and all the jungle there, it was never going to work. What we needed was regular visitors all over the park, and to activate the whole space. And signage became a key component of that, to educate and inform people, but not do it in a top-down kind of way. So no kind of finger wagging. The signage is explanatory. It's in different languages. And if you look at that sign at the very bottom there, it thanks people. It encourages them to behave in a positive way. And that's started to lend a philosophy to the wilds, which you'll see a bit more of. But as now people started exploring it, I realized there was a whole lot more to do, and we needed volunteers. And somebody suggested at that time that we start a Facebook page. And I thought, who's going to join that? But within a few months, we had 10,000 people. And it became an amazing way to communicate with a broad audience of people and bring their skills and knowledge and expertise and enthusiasm into the park. And working with volunteers is a funny thing because they can be hopelessly unskilled. I'd have situations where somebody who'd yanked out a plant and brought it to me saying, "Is this a weed?" Because a doctor might be specialist in what he does at work, but when he comes to the park, he has no idea. But also we had people bringing amazing skills. And my approach more and more became, just let what happens happen. Somebody has an idea, support them, bring them in. And so we started to benefit from an enormous amount of knowledge and expertise, which started to turn the park around. In the end, we had about 4,000 volunteers, and I believe that has changed the culture around the wilds. You can walk around it late on a Sunday afternoon after a busy day, and it's almost spotlessly clean. How many parks can you say that of? And I believe it's because people feel it is their park, it is our park, not somebody else's. And that came through the process of the volunteers. But it hasn't been without its challenges. Fundraising is always a challenge, still is 10 years later. And dealing with authority structures in the city is also very complicated. And I've had to use a lot of ingenuity and flexibility to get around people and bureaucrats who really didn't want any change at all. And that's really stretched me sometimes. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I noticed more elderly people walking around the wilds. Now, those of you who've been there will know the pathways are all stone, so they're quite uneven. And that's difficult for somebody who's unsteady on their feet. And one day I saw a lady trying to navigate this in a wheelchair. And I thought, we need to do something here. This park was laid out such a long time ago, and people didn't think of these things. So I put a call in the Facebook group asking people to help me to imagine a wheelchair path, which I later learned was actually called a universal access path. And various experts put up their hands, and we put together a whole proposal which would help people who struggle to walk, people who are blind, moms with babies in strollers, a whole manner of people. And we followed what was required from the bureaucracy and submitted the proposal. And a few months went past, and there was no reply. We chased, and the reply came back saying no. And I thought about this, and I read the thing a few times that they sent back to us. It made no sense to me. There was no compassion in it. And I brought together my builders, and I said, we're going to build it. And so we started. And then the police arrived, and all the builders ran away, and the police said, look, James, we know who you are, and we can see you're doing good work, but we've been sent to tell you if you don't stop, we'll arrest you. And so we had to obviously back down. Didn't want to spend the weekend in jail. And we planned some more. We stockpiled materials, we brought in a whole bunch of extra laborers, and we built it in the middle of the night. And by the next morning, it was all done, and nobody could do anything. So it gives you some idea of my kind of sense of willpower in getting things done. But it isn't always optimal when dealing with structures. And the park is owned by the city of Joburg. And we subsequently have benefited from other volunteers who've contributed to a much more positive relationship with city parks. And in fact, tomorrow we have our first planning meeting together with them, the first planning meeting in 10 years. And today, together with city parks, we're unveiling a Mandela bench. And so I hope that relationship now will become more positive. So now, 10 years later, if I look at the park, it's a wonderful place. Here's an example of something we did. This is the old entrance area at the bottom. At the top is the rebuilt space, all with reclaimed stone. There are about 6 kilometers of restored pathways, about 30 ponds and several waterfalls. I've got about 100 sculptures in the park. I've commissioned about 50 mosaics. Pablo's loving it. And we have this wondrous space. But the purpose of this talk was not to tell you about fixing things and about nature, because actually it's about community. Now, this is an overhead picture of the wilds. On the left is the downtown area, which we all know in Joburg is a challenging space. It's a poorer part of town and high density, and people there thought that the wilds was not open to them, or they couldn't afford to go there. To the north, you got the wealthy suburbs, and people there were scared of the space. So to make those people come together became an important mission for me, and to bring different groups and different ages and different religious groups and people with different interests. And we worked hard to create a series of events and talks and activations that bring people together to have conversations and interactions which they otherwise might not have. And it still gives me great pleasure to walk around there on a weekend and see the variety of people there. It's just extraordinary. It's one of the few places you can go to in Joburg where you see women walking on their own all the time. And it's just this wonderful space which gives me great hope and great joy. But you might wonder why I do it. So after all these years, I'm still doing it. Every afternoon I'm in the park and I'm fixing and planting and directing things. You may see from the smile on my face the pleasure that it gives me. That working with land and working with earth and soil and planting things is an inherently positive thing. And I believe it's part of our nature as humans, is we get great pleasure from this. It's given me so many things. I can't begin to count them. People often come to me in the park and they say, "Thank you for your sacrifice." And I say, "No, not at all. It's given me so much more." 10 years ago, I was just a painter working on my own. Now I ship sculptures all over the world because the wild has reinvented my practice. I design parks. I reinvent landscapes. It's become part of the work that I do. Just being in nature is a place to exercise and a place to meditate and a place to communicate and to connect with community. Recently, I was asked by a think tank who were putting together a long program to work out ways that they could overcome their frustration with the modern world because they felt disconnected and disempowered. And like I suppose a lot of people maybe feel in cities. And they explained this to me and asked if I would join them. And I thought about it, and I said, I'm sympathetic to what you feel, but I don't experience that at all. I feel completely connected with the place that I live. St. Francis of Assisi and Leo Tolstoy had some phrases. Tolstoy, or St. Francis said, "It is in giving that we receive." And Tolstoy says that our purpose in life, our sole purpose, is to help humanity. And I realize now, looking back, that they're right. And I challenge each of you to go into your city, our city, find a neglected space, and give it your energy and your time and your love. You won't just transform a space and give community interaction and hope. It will bring you benefits that you never imagined. Thank you.